You are part of a team that will protect our hemisphere and the way of life of our people.
Even before this year's graduation ceremonies, U.S. Customs and Border Protection had grown into our nation's largest police force, 60,000 strong.
It is a critically important job. It is a tough job. It is not an easy job.
But now, there are growing and disturbing questions. Has the U.S. Border Patrol, in its rush to win the war on illegal immigration, committed illegal, cruel, and unusual punishments?
Anything is allowed to happen. And it does, and it has.
Widespread abuse of prisoners on American soil, including physical abuse.
I told them they were hurting me, but they didn't care. They pulled my arms even higher.
Sexual assault.
He put his hands under my blouse and began to touch me.
And even torture.
They forced a young man to kneel on bottle caps, and they made him extend his arms.
A 5-month need-to-know investigation has found evidence of seemingly out-of-control Border Patrol agents.
I don't care. I don't care at all.
Declaring their own war on migrants. Of international relief agencies on the U.S. border.
It is incredible. I can't believe that a human can do something like that to another human.
Border Patrol agents have a dual responsibility.
And a Border Patrol insider who tried to raise the alarm.
Here we have an entire federal agency that's permitted to mistreat foreign nationals.
We begin south of the U.S. border on our way to investigate an allegation of sexual assault. The 10-hour drive offers time to review the Border Patrol's own guidelines. We discovered policies on everything from ensuring detainees are held under safe and humane conditions, provided food and water, to given emergency medical treatment. The guidelines also detailed strict penalties on everything from inappropriate behavior of a sexual nature to endangering the safety or causing the injury to any person. Our first destination, this one-room cabin, no running water, and home to this 28-year-old woman.
They arranged the false visa and the papers to cross me over.
In the summer of 2009, Jane Doe, as she's asked us to call her, entered the United States illegally in search of an American doctor who might repair a botched Mexican medical procedure. She was arrested at a checkpoint near Las Cruces, New Mexico, and says a Border Patrol agent took her to a cell alone.
To examine me, to search me. This is when he put his hands under my blouse and began to touch me.
Jane Doe told us that the agent grabbed her from behind, pushed her against a wall, and kept repeating one word in English that she could understand: baby.
My back was facing him, and he... So he was hugging me, and he had his hands under my blouse, so he was groping me.
She says he stopped 15 minutes later when a second agent entered. Too afraid to say anything, she was deported to Mexico. But it was what happened a year later that shocked even those familiar with cases like hers.
It was an awful experience, actually. I think that if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have believed it myself.
We traveled to El Paso, Texas, to speak with Tanya Chozet, a county commissioner. When Chozet learned of Jane Doe's story, she was a lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union. She says when Jane Doe finally mustered up enough courage, Chozet met her at the U.S. border to look at a lineup of suspects. But there, they were met by 8 agents wearing sunglasses, arms crossed. One agent made an announcement that Jane Doe, who had said she had been taken into a room alone and molested by a Border Patrol agent, would now be taken into a room alone and body searched by Border Patrol agents.
I can't think of any other reason why they would have been so menacing if they weren't trying to intimidate her. I was sitting with Jane Doe, and tears started streaming down her face, and she started shaking. I stood up to go and comfort Jane Doe, and one of the agents pointed at my seat, and he yelled for me to sit back down.
Upset, Jane Doe twice failed to identify her assailant from photographs. Remember, she says he was behind her almost all the time.
My guess is that they were hoping that she would feel threatened enough to drop her complaint.
And she did. No Border Patrol agent was ever charged.
I'm going to go through the X-ray booth.
And it's not just complaints by Mexicans. We traveled to San Diego to meet Dana Rodriguez, an American citizen who says she was on her way home from Mexico when she recorded her border crossing on her cell phone.
There's the children, and here we go.
Rodriguez visits her husband in Mexico almost every week and says she is harassed by Customs and Border Protection officers so often that this Hispanic American, who has lived her entire life in the United States, wanted her family to see it.
I wanted to make sure that they were able to see exactly what it was that I was experiencing, because I would come home like upset, visually upset.
She was about to enter a vehicle X-ray station inside the secure Border Patrol inspection area. An officer will ask her if she's pregnant. X-rays can harm an unborn child. But listen to what happened next.
Are you pregnant?
No.
Do you want to be pregnant? Have you ever been through this before? How you doing, darling?
Yes.
What's your name?
Angelina.
You are so pretty.
Thank you.
She's pretty too.
Thank you.
You must get your look from your daddy.
Nah.
Sure, not your mom. No, I'm playing. How are you, though? She's pointing at me. Is that crazy?
At first, the comments unsettled her. She said if a guy said that to her in a bar, she'd just leave. But this was an armed federal officer, and she wasn't free to leave.
I don't know if he just said something that was very inappropriate, but I don't want to say anything because I don't want to get in trouble.
But the more she replayed it in her head...
Are you pregnant?
No.
Do you want to be pregnant?
The more it upset her.
How you doing, darling?
Yes.
I know how I felt, and I felt that this man disrespected me.
You know, people might say he was trying to be funny, even though he wasn't. It wasn't as ugly as it appears to be.
It wasn't funny. It wasn't friendly banter to me. It wasn't that way to my daughter. So why would he think that it's okay?
The Border Patrol has strict penalties for offenses like sexual harassment. But when Rodriguez complained about the incident to a supervisor on the scene, she says the supervisor never wrote anything down, not even her name.
They should let them know you're not supposed to be behaving this way. You have a job, a real serious one. Take it serious.
The Border Patrol agents have an incredibly challenging, dangerous job.
Need to Know traveled to Washington, D.C. 3 months ago to meet with W. Ralph Basham to discuss Border Patrol policies. Basham was the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection from 2006 to 2009. He says border agents do take their jobs very seriously because their lives depend on it.
You've got that many agents out there in this incredibly challenging terrain. You've got people coming at you that you don't know. You don't know what they represent. It could be that day worker, or it could be a terrorist, or it could be a cartel smuggling drugs or people.
In fact, about 1,000 border agents are reportedly assaulted every year. In New York City, we found one of them. Former Border Patrol agent Ephraim Cruz says he was attacked by Mexican drug smugglers.
We want to know who's coming into the country and who's leaving the country.
For 9 years, Cruz was a U.S. Border Patrol agent working the U.S.-Mexican border near Tucson, Arizona, earning the rank of senior agent. But in 2003, Cruz says he began noticing detainees being treated harshly, including extreme overcrowding, even when empty cells were available.
Individuals being crammed into cells twice beyond the posted capacity.
This is while there are empty cells right next to it?
That is correct.
How crowded was it in there?
Standing room only. I mean, you couldn't even lay down on the floor.
Deliberate overcrowding of prisoners may not sound like much, but it not only breaks strict Border Patrol policy, it would even break the Geneva Conventions governing enemies during wartime. And that, says Cruz, was just the beginning. Have you seen people not being given water, even though it's pretty clear they desperately need it?
Yes.
Not being fed for long periods of time?
Yes. We weren't feeding minors in our custody for a shift, and by shift I mean 8 to 10 hours, sometimes 3 shifts. Now we're talking a whole day, sometimes up to 2 days.
Wouldn't a lot of agents make the counterclaim? They're invading our country. Why should we treat them nicely?
We took at least 3 oaths when we arrived at the academy and upon graduation that we will treat them as if circumstances were reversed.
The accusations of former Agent Cruz are not confirmed by his peers. We couldn't find any other Border Patrol agents to come forward with similar claims, and there are tens of thousands of agents. How many of you would complain about the conditions of detention under the hands of the U.S. Border Patrol? But when we traveled just south of the Arizona border to Nogales, Mexico, we found dozens of migrants who had just been released by the Border Patrol, who described an escalating litany of abuse. This man and others spoke of overcrowding. He says he stood with 120 migrants for 2 days in a cell. The sign overhead read maximum occupancy 48.
We were screaming to let people out. It was hot. We couldn't breathe, and we were about to pass out, but they kept packing people in.
This man and others described almost constant verbal abuse, a violation of Border Patrol policy. What do they say?
Stupid. He said bad words like the people they don't know English. They say get up, just move, mother. And they say I talk to you, dumb.
This man and others told us he was denied needed medical attention. 3 days without water in the desert, he began vomiting blood while in detention.
They told me that they were going to take me out, so if I die, I would die outside and not inside.
This man told us he had been physically abused.
They grabbed me from behind. They pulled this arm up high.
He says border agents dislocated his shoulder and then refused him medical care for 3 days until his shoulder became so swollen an American surgeon had to operate. Have you seen any kind of physical abuse where agents are abusing immigrants?
I have.
While all of these stories may seem uncorroborated, we're not the only ones who have heard them. An advocacy group, No More Deaths, interviewed 13,000 migrants and found that almost half reported overcrowding, and only 1 in 7 received the medical care they needed. All findings are disputed by the Border Patrol. Hannah Hafter is a healthcare specialist affiliated with No More Deaths.
Basically, the government's position is, this report of thousands of health complaints and detention complaints is not true. They're lies. They're making it up. They're exaggerating it.
I've been here for years. I hear the same stories from hundreds of people over the course of years. They have no ability to communicate with each other, to conspire, to tell the same story. I mean, this is one way to identify that something is true, is that many people over the course of time experience the same thing.
The International Red Cross is respected worldwide for helping desperate people in countries like Syria, the Sudan, and Haiti, which is why we were shocked to find them here in Nogales. They serve the south side of the U.S.-Mexican border, aiding migrants, some who say they've been refused emergency medical care by the U.S. Border Patrol.
They come sick, beaten or hurt. Whatever the case, we treat them.
And so does this nurse, who works at a faith-based medical clinic in Nogales.
Every day we get people that have been abused by the Border Patrol. Every day.
If you could say one thing to the Border Patrol, to the agents that hold these people, detain these people, what would you say to them?
They should realize that they are humans, regardless of their nationality. For God's sake, that they treat them like human beings because they are not animals, right?
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it painstakingly documents cases of Border Patrol abuse. In 2010, DHS reported it received nationwide only 3 complaints on the conditions of detention, and only 21 regarding Border Patrol treatment. We found 3 times that, in one room, on one day.
We are not the ones making it up, so what can I say? We are here, we are living it every day. The abuses are frequent.
I do know that we have seen a relatively constant trend of concerns and complaints that we have registered through our consular network along the border.
Arturo Sorokin, the Mexican ambassador to the United States, says that his government has zero tolerance for abuse of Mexican nationals and has filed formal complaints with U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
I think that this issue contaminates the wellspring of public opinion in Mexico as to the relationship with the United States and the strategic relationship that we're developing with the United States.
The Border Patrol does spend millions of dollars every year on their own humanitarian efforts, trying to save the lives of migrants who have died by the thousands, mostly for lack of water.
This is the part of U.S. Customs and Border Protection's mission that rarely makes headlines: rescuing those in trouble along our southern border.
This public relations video champions the work of Border Patrol's search, trauma, and rescue teams. Their mission: to provide life-saving aid to distressed migrants along the border.
Building the capacity to save lives.
But that video is in stark contrast to this video.
I don't care. I don't care at all.
This is a U.S. Border Patrol agent named David Kermes. The video, shot by volunteers for the advocacy group No More Deaths in 2009.
This is not your water? Then I can take it.
The organization places water where clusters of migrant bodies have been found. They hope the water might save human lives. But the Border Patrol agent has a different idea.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm thirsty. Does your horse want some? Come on. Come on. Nah, don't put your hat. Okay.
Volunteers have found their water containers slashed and empty. When they complained to the Border Patrol this February, they were promised that the Border Patrol chief in Tucson would direct all agents to leave the water alone. But the destruction continued, so they placed hidden cameras near the water, and in May recorded this. Publicly, the patrol insists it does everything it can to protect the lives of migrants, but this video calls that into question.
People make my job harder, catching these people, because you're putting out food and water for them. You're aiding and abetting felons coming into the country.
For the record, coming into the country one time illegally is not a felony, and putting out water is legal. This is Agent Kermes' Facebook page, where he publishes Border Patrol photos of migrants in the desert saying, "Run, you little bastards," cartoons depicting urinating on a Mexican holiday, and publicly insulting the President of the United States. If a Border Patrol agent is found guilty of unprofessional or offensive behavior, discrimination based on one's nationality, or breaking the patrol's policy on social media, an agent can be reprimanded or fired. So we asked Agent Kermes about his Facebook page, and he said that if we don't like it, don't look at it. Yet minutes after we spoke with him, the images in question were removed. But perhaps the most disturbing claim of all, this migrant told us that while he was in custody, he witnessed torture, a violation of policy, U.S. and international law.
They forced a young man to kneel on bottle caps, and they made him extend his arms. He was forced to be like that for 3 hours. And before making him kneel, they covered the cameras inside so they couldn't record.
Former Agent Cruz says he also witnessed forms of torture.
A supervisor directed an agent to place a migrant in a stress position.
A stress position?
Yes.
Forcing prisoners to remain in a half squat until they could no longer stand.
By putting him in a stress position, the message is what?
I'm the authority.
Get in line.
Get in line. When I say move, you move, or you do as I say when I tell you so.
Is it against the rules?
Clearly.
Is it fair to say it's a form of torture?
It is fair to say that, yes.
We see a pattern of abuse and impunity that needs to be addressed.
Andrea Guerrero of the advocacy group Southern Border Communities Coalition says that the very moral foundation of our country is in danger if these abuses persist.
The civil and human rights laws of this country apply to all people in this land, all people who are here present, whether they're legal or not. And if they're not applied for these people, that becomes a very slippery slope. We don't want to go there.
So we contacted the Border Patrol. We wanted to show them the videos we'd found and ask them about the abuse of migrants in their custody. They declined our interview request, but issued this statement. The overwhelming majority of CBP employees and officers perform their duties with honor and distinction, working tirelessly every day to keep our country safe. CBP takes every allegation of misconduct seriously and fully cooperates in the investigation of such allegations. In fact, CBP did fully cooperate in one investigation, the attempted prosecution of a Border Patrol agent who they felt was no longer worthy of wearing the badge.
I found myself on the receiving end of 5 felony charges being brought against me and accused of smuggling an alien into the country.
That's right, 16 months after he first began warning his supervisors of the abuse of migrants in detention, Cruz was charged for giving the girlfriend of a Border Patrol agent a ride across the border. When it was later discovered the woman was in the U.S. illegally, Cruz was suspended without pay and taken to trial. But not only was Cruz acquitted of all charges, agents testified under oath during the trial that he had been targeted for retribution.
And so you were reinstated to your job?
No.
Cruz was told he would never get his job back, and fellow agents called him a traitor and asked, "What side are you on?" So he resigned, having never been questioned about his reports of widespread abuses of foreign migrants held on American soil.
For the record, what side are you on?
On the side of my oath that I took, on the side of the policies that I swore to uphold, and on the side of due process, civil rights, and human rights. I was able to do the job and do it with dignity.